I think for me, it's really been more about slowing down. Slowing down and enjoying the moment has been the challenging thing for me. And ever since I've gotten involved in entrepreneurship, I've been able to do that more. Just enjoy everything for what it is.
Hey, welcome back to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge, the go-to show for the latest trends, strategies, and breakthroughs in the world of technology leadership. We're the only show that dives deep into a world where emerging technologies meet digital transformation and the most influential tech ideas are discussed and dissected. Today, my guest is Brad Messer. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
So let's dive right in. I see you're a software developer. Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about how you got into that.
Okay. Oh my goodness, that was the fun part. So I started at Clarkson University, North Country in Potsdam. So around 2013 was when I first heard of this thing called big data in I got started in the applied mathematics. And so engineering school, really great applied mathematics program, started hearing about data science, how it would help people. And then I kind of made that pivot. And then I just kind of kept following that, got an internship. Had a friend who was with IBM on sabbatical at the time for his PhD. So actually got into the mainframe analytics and AI strategy where I worked for 8 years. And so really enjoyed that. And then I was ready for entrepreneurship. And yeah, just been enjoying the ride since.
So what had you like pivot into entrepreneurship? Like what was the impetus for that?
So I've always been an entrepreneur and so I would always have like these really great ideas that I'd want to go work on. And of course it's the classic big tech kind of thing where it's like, or even classic job thing where it's only, you can only work on your little small bit of the puzzle, and that's okay. That's a-okay. But, I just wanted something a little bit more, and that was okay too. But, that I just had those entrepreneurial tendencies, and I was just like, hey, let's give it a shot?
So what's the journey been like for you then?
So it's definitely been quite the learning process. So I really sit more as an executive now. So I try to do a lot of strategy and, also handling my portfolio of startups. Of course, every business moves at a different speed and, you don't want to move too fast so the business doesn't go off a cliff anywhere, but you can't afford to move too slowly. So it's always kind of a balancing act in that regard.
Yeah. So what's been your biggest challenge so far in your career?
Hmm. I think for me, it's really been more about slowing down. Slowing down and enjoying the moment has been the challenging thing for me. And ever since I've gotten involved in entrepreneurship, I've been able to do that more. Just enjoy everything for what it is.
Yeah, for me, when I was a software developer, it was always being present in the moment because it seems like your job never ends. You're constantly, even when you leave, like say on a Friday night, you leave work, you've been working on a problem for the last couple of days and it's still not solved, and it just keeps going in your head and going in your head and going in your head. And I had 4 children, and my wife, and so you just have to be present in the moment for those weekend times. And sometimes that was hard to do. I probably struggle with it more now. I would probably struggle with it more nowadays because of the smartphone and all of that. It makes it unfortunately, so much easier to not be present. What are your so do you manage a team of people at all?
So right now we are still getting things started. So I say portfolio of ideas in a sense that, there's a lot of high value to be had from everything that we're working on. And yet we are still trying to get things off the ground. And so getting there, I do, I am working within a couple boards of directors. So, I have that experience as well. And so, yeah, I mean, indirectly, but not very much so.
Well, as a person who's been a member of a tech team, what do you think is the best way for management to make sure that the staff sticks around and doesn't like job hop? What's going to make them happy at work?
I think that's gonna I think that's really going to be different to each individual. So, for me, I always liked moving with the flow as the industry evolved. And so that was one, you'd get done with one big project and it's like, everybody's kind of like, whoo, I'm ready to take a break here. And I'm like, all right, what's next? Other people are looking for project one into project two into project three. And that's okay too. And so, I think it's up to management to really just have the conversations with the individuals about what they want out of their careers and just to make sure that they get that and to encourage them to go after it. Oftentimes, it took me a bit longer to get to entrepreneurship because I was actually so scared to go after it.
Hmm.
And even though, I was meant to, I was still scared and there was a lot of emotional work that had to go on.
Yeah, you make a good point. When I worked for a company for a while as their CTO, they were a restaurant delivery service, and they were owned by these three gentlemen who were extremely entrepreneurial mindset oriented. In fact, one of them became the worldwide president of the Young Entrepreneurs Organization. So,
Wow.
he believed in rewarding performance. So, like as a CTO, I was getting paid like $80,000 a year, but I actually cleared about $350,000 a year because of
Mhm.
bonuses, And so he encouraged in all of his staff having that entrepreneurial mindset, including like we had people that answered the phones and he would regularly meet with them like every other week, twice a month, to see if there was anything that the software could do better. What kind of complaints are the customers having? What are the common problems that they have? And so he was very smart about mining the frontline people's brains for issues that they were experiencing. But what was also kind of funny about him was, as the CTO, I was responsible for making sure there was help desk personnel available 24 hours a day. And so we had at that time it was a Nextel phone. It was just, click and hello, are you there? Like a walkie-talkie. And we had our help extension after hours forwarded to whomever was carrying that phone. And about every 6 weeks, I would take the phone for a week and he'd say to me, "Why are you doing this?" And I'd laugh because I'm doing what you're doing. I'm trying to find out what the user's problems are and talk to them directly and pick their brain so that I can fix the issues with technology. So,
Mhm.
as someone who as someone who is obviously looking at building businesses, how do you feel about that? What do you think about giving people like that opportunity to like run with it?
Yeah, no, how I like to act as a manager is that, I like to give people a sense of where they are. I like to give people a sense of what it takes to get to where of where their potential could lead them. I give them all the support that they need in between, and I let their own efforts dictate where they go. That's the thing that I found easiest. So
So,
if they
uh,
Mhm.
so as a software developer, are you still like working late long hours and digging into code late at night and stuff like that?
Not not as much into code. I'm more digging into business operations, marketing, sales, all of that on top of doing like IT strategy and trying to get some level of MVP defined and such. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I work with tech executives as a business coach, and one of their big issues is focus. So they try to deal with it in different ways, but usually caffeine is kind of the go-to.
It is.
And used to be mine as well. Even, I'm running 7 businesses, and some nights I'm up until, midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. I have developers that are working 24 hours a day. So I used to drink a lot of energy drinks, and my wife was like, "Oh my God, I can't." I read that someone had a heart attack, their heart exploded. And so I started looking for a solution, and I found this product. It's called Magic Mind,
Okay.
and it's
Okay.
just a little tiny shot, like about this big, and it has matcha, nootropics, and adaptogens in it. So it brings like super clarity and focus. And it kind of tastes like an herbal tea, right? Like,
Oh, very
um,
nice.
so I've replaced the energy drink with that, and I have to say, like my afternoons used to crash, not anymore.
Hmm.
And so I reached out to them, and they've made it possible for my listeners to get a nice discount on their product. So if you go to magicmind.com/JAN gaining technology, you can get a 50% discount off of a subscription as long as you do that within the 10 days after the episode airs. You can also use the code tech leadership, or if you want to keep it simple, but you'll pay full price, you can go to Sprouts Farmers Market and grab a bottle to try. So I highly recommend the product. It just works. But so as a leader in technology,
Hmm.
where do you, we're constantly, everyone knows that technology is evolving rapidly. Where do you see things going in 5 years from now?
Oh my goodness. So I'm certainly seeing AI embedded in everything. I mean, there was the Consumer Electronics Show, which certainly had a lot of interesting topics. So we're talking about, I think it was Samsung or LG's home robot. So we were seeing about the wearable dog collars. That was pretty interesting. So what other things? I usually find my head buried in research papers anymore when I get a chance. Anything like that, I'll be poking around like drug discovery, I'll be poking around climate change, the other different areas that are very interesting. Also looking at like model architectures, optimal model architectures, how things are different. Bringing in one particularly interesting area has been physics inspired neural networks. And so what they're trying to do is neural networks can replace some of the traditional physical process modeling, but then they try to bake some of the physical processes into the modeling process. So you get this fusion of those two in a sense. And so that's kind of been interesting area that's been developing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned you see AI being embedded in almost everything. And I agree with you. When I was at CES, I even saw a robot chef that cooked up stir fry. It was really
Oh,
kind of
wow.
interesting. And then cleaned up after himself afterwards. So that
Oh,
was really
wow.
interesting.
Okay.
But so obviously you see AI as being a big thing in the future. But do you see it as a good or a bad thing?
Well, I think it can be both, of course. It's exactly what we make of it. It's a tool. So a lot of controls have been in place for quite some time to where I mean, even before government intervention, are still saying, okay, we have to have all of these different kinds of considerations before we deploy it. Now, of course, you also have people who are going to say, we don't want to have to respect that at all. We're going to do with it what we want.
Mhm.
And so it's very interesting in that regard. I still see, it coming out on a good side. I think there will be things that we will definitely have to consider probably within, I would say probably 5 to 7, maybe more 7 to 10 years time frame. I don't want to push anything, but just knowing, what AI can do. So there's definitely things that we want to keep in mind.
Yeah, that CES show showed a lot of interesting tools. Do you have a favorite AI tool that you use?
Oh goodness. I haven't used, weirdly enough, I really have not had to use in quite some time. I've had to figure out, okay, how do I want to apply these concepts that I've learned, but I haven't had to use it in a little bit. I mean, I really do like the large language models. So like ChatGPT and Bard, I just love what they're going. I love what creative openings they bring up. And so,
Yeah, it's funny though. Like I see a lot of people working with like trying to improve their messaging online. They're not good writers or whatever, and then they regurgitate what Chat GPT writes for them. And it's not as good. There's no emotion, there's no personality. But what I do find Chat GPT great for, like for instance, I'm speaking at a virtual assistant summit this weekend, and
mhm.
I'm talking to them about pricing strategy. And I just went to ChatGPT and I fed it like my ideas. I said, here's what I think about pricing strategy. Give me an outline. Then I went through the outline. I was like, I don't want this. Oh, this could be better. I'll change it to this. And when I was done, I had a nice outline. And then I used the outline to write, my speech to these people. But Had I used the original outline, it would be a very different presentation. But it's a great tool for like, hey, here's a jump start for your writing. I think as one of the amazing stories, and I've told it on this show multiple times that I've heard about Chat GPT is there was a woman whose child went to one of those bouncy places where they have those huge buildings where they bounce up and down, and they got some kind of an injury.
Oh no.
Neurologists couldn't figure it out. And she was really sad watching her child just, constantly be sick and have headache. So she took all of his like MRI reports, CT scan reports, anything doctor's notes, and she keyed it into Chat GPT and it came back with possible diagnosis. And she brought it to the neurologist, and the neurologist said, as crazy as it sounds, I think that might be the case. I never even thought of this.
Mhm.
And I think that's where Chat GPT and tools like that are going to become hugely successful, is analyzing data, because the
Yep.
very thing that I said before, where there's no emotion, that's the very thing that makes them like the key to analyzing data. Because you don't get your like I gave you an example. I'm doing fantasy hockey with my family, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, I have most of my favorite players on there. And then, of course, you don't want to bench them when they're not playing well because it's your favorite player. There's too much emotion involved. If I could pull myself apart from the emotion, I'd probably be doing better. But uh, it's what do you see as the future of that large language model stuff? What do you think is going to happen if you
Oh,
could predict the future?
so I know that the near term, we're definitely going to see multi-agents being useful. And so what happens is that you can start to program the LLMs to have certain personalities. So you could have a personality be like a code writer, for instance. And so their whole job is just publishing, say, like optimized Python code. And then there's another personality who is responsible for reviewing and scanning that Python code as it's generated to make sure, okay, is this secure? Is this worthwhile to put into production? And so that is definitely an interesting movement that I have seen. It will also lead to more hyper automation, building on top of the automated building blocks that we have right now. And the AI will be able to do more, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a chess player, and they're the biggest site in the world. It's called chess.com. Imagine what they would have paid for that URL today. But chess.com, and what they've done is they've taken AI and they've fed it the games of different grandmaster chess players
Mhm.
and had it learn the style of that player. And then they create a bot that plays against you, so you can play against one of the top players. And I think you're right about it permeating everything eventually, because now it's getting into game playing and mimicking other people. So if you think about it, that's pretty exciting that you could go and play chess games against like your favorite professional chess player and learn from what they're teaching you essentially, but as they crush you during the game. But that's one of the places where AI really has made its mark. I'm sure you've probably heard of, since you're into AI, you may have heard of AlphaZero, the
Mhm.
AI chess program. It literally learned how to play chess by just being pumped in millions and millions of chess games. And then it immediately went into a world computer chess championship and beat the number one engine that was out on the market. So it's really crazy. And I wonder if there comes a point in time where AI, instead of going to like a chess coach, your chess coach would be AI. And as we talked about it, analyzing data, it can analyze you and see, what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses, and then help you get better and craft like a specific plan, or like a personal trainer.
Mhm.
Have it craft, a good diet for you and a good exercise program. I can see this being a huge, huge thing in the future. And then if you couple it with an expert, so like you're trying to lose weight, so you get an actual personal trainer who's using an AI tool to guide you along the way. I think people get great results on things like that. So what do you see as like the future of AI in education?
Goodness. So I think one of the biggest things there is going to be more personalized systems, right? So of course, one of the biggest things is that you go into a school and the teachers can only move so fast with each other. So of course, then you get, some of your remedial classes, you get your regular classes, your advanced classes, whereas there's been a lot different systems coming up where where you can use AI to offer more personalized services. And so that's actually one thing that I use to keep my own education on point is I'll just go to Coursera and I'll be like, okay, what do I need to learn? How am I going to apply it here? Why do I need to know this? And so I go through, I learn it, and keeps me up to speed.
Yeah, and I think that's also a thing I could see. Like when I was a CTO, one of the biggest challenges was some people learn things slowly, people learn things quickly, and the ones who learn things quickly are bored when they're forced to be at the pace of the people who learn things slowly. So being able to recognize that and maybe give them a little bit more while you're still working with the slower person is going to also help, I think, in the long run.
Yeah, I was actually seeing a very interesting story recently where some younger teenage girl was having trouble in-person school. So she went online school and then got through her freshman year by like 14 or 15. Yeah, I was like, darn, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy, but I mean, like, I suppose stuff like that'll become possible. I mean, if you think about it, why isn't school like going to like Udemy and taking a course where if I learned the first module quickly, why can't I just move on to the second module? That's especially as we're getting more and more disconnected, like remote learning. I don't see why we can't do that, and especially if it's guided by a tool that's looking at your results and going, all right, you're ready to get more advanced concepts.
Yeah, I think it's still important that I think it's still important that we have an expert kind of guiding to say, to really
Agreed.
verify that the kid is there. Because of course, one of the weaknesses of online education that I found out through experience is that you don't get that same level of confidence coming from like employers as much as if you had gone in person because they're like, well,
That's
nobody
interesting.
verified you as much. Even then, though, what I did to counter that was so I would always make sure and go through that I would keep an A as part of all the classes that I was getting graded in. So I was like, well, if anything is less than an A, I'm going back and I'm redoing it until I get it. And
That's
so,
that's interesting because my youngest son went through his junior year of high school during the pandemic, and so everything was remote learning. He told me how he felt really bad for a lot of students because when you're in the classroom and a teacher's up there and they're lecturing and you have a question, you just walk right up and you ask them the question. But when they're on a Zoom meeting, the teachers were like, "Okay, class is over," and end meeting. You have to like schedule time with the teacher, and he said the extra effort that it took while it was possible to do, it just made it way more difficult to reach out for help. And I think that might also be why in your case where you mentioned employers being reticent to like go with somebody who learned everything remotely, I think part of that is that they feel like maybe you didn't get as complete an education as you could have had it been face to face. Just one
yeah.
thought that I had as you were saying that.
Yeah, and that's actually the interesting thing because, I'm looking at the situation that you talked about from your son, and I'm wondering, okay, why didn't the teacher set up like a Discord or a Slack channel or a Slack workspace, right? Why didn't the school do something for them? Like,
Yeah,
that's
like
like
where's the problem solving, right?
yeah, the tools exist, and it's just a matter of using them, right? So like that's one of the things that we traded for in the online classes though, is we got access to a whole Slack community of people taking the same course. And it's just that it was more of an asynchronous nature. And so, the benefit is that they did have TAs who were essentially paid full time to, review the channels and help provide feedback and everything. It's just a different experience. I don't think that means it's bad. But it's certainly different.
Yeah, and I really do think that the education person, the expert on education, who the teacher, the school, they need to think about those things because the onus is on them to provide an environment that kind of replicates the in-person environment. And you're right. thing that was missing there was like you say, like a Discord channel or a Slack, something that they could be like, hey, teacher, here's this. And even if the teacher didn't go in there until 10 o'clock at night and answered all the questions at the same time, at least that teacher is now aware that John has a problem with this lesson and they can focus more on that. Or maybe that's their way of getting feedback. Because in person, if you get enough people coming up and saying, hey, I didn't understand that formula that you taught, you're going to spend some time going over it. And it kind of goes back to what you said early on in this interview, where learning to slow down.
Mhm.
I think that's also one of my problems with an online course is I'll get through it, and if they start talking for too long about something I already know, I tune out and I miss stuff. And then you get to like a later module and they're like, as we talked about in module two, and you're like, what? I don't remember that. Got to go back to module two. But a
Yeah,
lot of kids don't know enough to do that. So I think education online, while it has its benefits, isn't for everybody. It just isn't. And I think you kind of make that point when you said like employers don't like it. I'd love to talk to somebody about if there's anybody out there that is an employer who would have that attitude, reach out to me, because I'd like to talk to you on an episode about why that's your attitude. Because I have reasons why I think remote learning can work if it's done correctly. So I have a differing opinion.
yeah, I mean, it's always very interesting. And so, I was a personality who did very well in the remote environment. I'm like, I didn't need the project management systems to tell me I needed to get stuff done. I knew because I had an email. I knew because I had a Slack message.
Right.
And then I
Right.
then I did the thing and then I replied.
Well, this has been a fun conversation. Could you let my listeners know where they might find you if they want to connect?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So then you can also find me at my email. So messerb5467 @gmail.com. So LinkedIn was linkedin.com/in/Brad Messer. We are also working on revamping Structure AI. So that's going to be an AI consultancy and strategy firm for small and medium-sized enterprises as we move forward. And so we are getting the branding and such underway right now. So a lot of good plans for that moving forward.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I encourage listeners to reach out if they're interested in that. And all that information will be on screen and also in the notes. But thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Bye.
All right. Thanks for listening to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. New episodes every Wednesday.